All right, well, welcome back. Hope you enjoyed the hike. If you made it this far, thank you so much for sticking around. I'd like to do this portion of the video to give you a trail guide, to give you all the information necessary if you feel inspired to go and hike this yourself. If you do plan on camping, you will have to go to recreation.gov and reserve your campsite ahead of time. I plan to do this as an overnighter, and my goal was to camp at Moose Lake and then day hike up to the unknown peak up at Grand Pass, and then also hike around to Lillian Ridge the next day. Overall, I did about 15 miles in 2 days for this trip. To get to the trailhead, you will have to go through Hurricane Ridge and get to the parking lot, turn around, and then go through Obstruction Point Road. Obstruction Point Road is a dirt road. You will have to go on it for several miles in order to get to the trailhead. It is pretty well maintained, but it is kind of dusty, especially if you catch yourself going behind another car. Now, there are some areas where the road is a bit narrow, only for about one car to pass. So if you encounter a car coming the opposite direction, you will want to make sure you have some areas where you can pull off to allow a car to pass. It is overall a pretty nice road, pretty safe, and the typical vehicle should be able to get it. And I don't think four-wheel drive is required to make it to the trailhead. Once you're at the trailhead, you will want to park. When I got there, the parking lot was pretty full, so you will want to get there pretty early. I got there probably around 10:30, and apparently that wasn't early enough. So I would recommend getting there sometime between 8 to 10 and get yourself a spot. So I had to park a little bit further down the road and walk to the trailhead. I hiked this trail in early July, and so there was still plenty of snow left throughout the trail in various areas, especially when you got to Grand Pass area. So just be aware of that depending on the time that you do go. Once you're on the trail, the first 2 miles are super scenic. You can have 360 views of mountaintops, snow-capped mountains. You can see Mount Olympus with the glacier and everything. You can see Hurricane Ridge. So it's really nice. So make sure you are able to get a nice sunny, clear day to really enjoy those views. About 1.5 miles in, you will notice a trail off to your right. That is the Lillian Ridge trail. That is going to be a lot more difficult than the Grand Valley Grand Pass. Now, I took that trail coming back, but you will not want to probably take that going forward unless you plan on doing it counterclockwise. But it is something to consider if you do want to go down that way. That is the Lillian Pass trail, but it does show it unnamed and unmarked there. It just shows a trail. So you will want to take a left down there to get down into Grand Pass. Once you're into Grand Pass, you will start seeing a little bit more trees and wooded area. Streams are really nice. When I went in July, the flowers were in full bloom, so very colorful, very pretty, and you can see that with the background of the snow-capped mountains. As you descend, you'll be able to see Grand Lake, and this is the biggest lake of the three that are down there. And Grand Lake is a nice lake, and it's basically probably about maybe 3 miles into the trail. I recommend actually going another mile to Moose Lake. Now, Moose Lake I thought was the most scenic, and it also has some beautiful camp spots. I had a camp spot right on the water. So basically, that's about 4 miles into the trail. So I started the day, I hiked out to Moose Lake, and then I set up camp there at Moose Lake to reserve my spot pretty early. There's a few spots that are right on the water. I was lucky enough to grab one of them. Once I had my camp set up at Moose Lake, I decided to take a day pack with me and went up to the Grand Pass, and I decided to also climb up and follow the trail to the Unnamed Peak, and there was spectacular views there. It's about 2.5 miles from Moose Lake, so you're looking at about 6.5 miles from the trailhead to get to that Unnamed Peak. So I did that, and then I headed back, so that was another 2.5 miles to Moose Lake. When I was at Moose Lake, the deer were not very shy. There were lots of deer, very friendly deer, maybe a little too friendly if you ask me, but once I had my camp set up, I was able to cook dinner, but the deer were just curious. They would come up, they would walk around, they'd walk in front of my camera, and so the deer were not shy at all. I will recommend, make sure you leave your clothes inside the tent. I had taken off my little sun hoodie to dry, and I left it on a tree. Well, a deer got a hold of it during the night and took it with him and decided to make it his own and marked it. So I went and found it probably in the morning, probably about a couple hundred yards away from my tent, soaked. And I don't think he put it in the water. I think he peed all over it. And so I rinsed it off quite a few times and let it dry. But I took a cotton shirt to sleep in at night, and I was planning on hiking in the hoodie, but that delayed it for a while until I was starting to get pretty sunburned the next day. About a mile down from Moose Lake, you also have Gladys Lake. Now this is a smaller lake, definitely not as scenic as Moose Lake. So I do recommend, if you are planning on camping, Moose Lake, if you can reserve a spot there, that's the way to go. The nice thing about camping in these lake areas is they do have bear hang, so you do not have to take a bear canister if you don't want to take the weight. The only bad thing about Moose Lake was the mosquitoes are pretty bad, so I'd recommend bring some DEET or a thermocell or a mosquito net if you have one. So in the morning, I packed up camp, I had breakfast, and I decided to go ahead and do the Lillian Ridge loop. So you'd have to go about another half-mile past Gladys Lake, and right before you get into Grand Pass area, there is a trail that veers off to the right there and goes up the mountainside. It is very scenic there, especially it's a nice green side mountain with flowers, and you can see all three lakes once you start getting up there. Going up the side of Lillian Ridge was kind of nerve-wracking at times, especially with a pack on. There were some areas where you completely lost sight of the trail because you're going up kind of almost a boulder field going up to the mountaintop. And as you did so, it was almost like a knife edge and you're right on the edges at times. So there was something to be aware of. It's not like Kalani Ridge where it's wide and open. This is kind of like knife edge kind of ridge at times. One thing to be aware of about Lillian Ridge is there are some areas where you will have to scramble, so be confident in your scramble skills. I will say there probably is at least maybe class 3 scramble areas, especially once you get to the boulder field. From there, you're able to climb several peaks, and you get to the highest peak up there, and you can have views of Rainier and Mount Baker if you have a really nice clear day. Once you come down from that mountaintop area and enjoying the views, you do have to come along on the backside on Lillian Ridge. And as you do so, there's a lot of scree there, loose rocks. Definitely take your time going there. The trail is just vaguely marked, and there's times I completely really lost the trail. I mistaken it for a sheep trail and or goat trail, and I was following a goat trail. The next thing I know, I'm several hundred feet away from the trail and had to descend a little bit further to make it. But something to keep in mind, definitely good to have a tracking device on you and see your GPS coordinates as you follow that trail, because it's really easy to lose on Lillian Ridge. Once you come back up from that little descent, you're back on the ridge. You have several kind of sharp knife edge areas to go over, and then it kind of smooths out and broadens out until it connects again to Grand Pass. So from Lillian Ridge, the start of Lillian Ridge where I did to the trailhead, you're looking at probably another 4.5 miles to get back to the trailhead, about a mile, about 3.5 miles to connect back to Grand Pass. So overall, this was a really nice trail, nice loop. It wasn't too difficult. There were just some areas to be aware of on Lillian Ridge that were a little bit sketchy, but overall, just take your time and make sure you don't grab on any loose boulders, watch your footing, and you should be fine. Overall, this is a trail I definitely would love to do again. The views are absolutely amazing. I did probably overall, with all the hiking I did, about 15 miles round trip. Anyways, if this inspired you and you go on to hike this trail, let me know, or if you've already hiked it, let me know your thoughts. Leave me a comment in the comment section. Also, if you like what you saw, make sure to give me a thumbs up. That really helps the YouTube algorithm, whatever that means. But also subscribe, and you'll get more silent hiking videos like this. And as always, thanks for watching.